Morgan and Kelly from Real Athlete Diets, aka RAD, an awesome Boulder company. Really excited about the podcast. Morgan, Kelly, thank you guys very much for being here. I appreciate it. Let me just put this here.
Perfect.
How you guys been? What do you think of this Boulder weather?
It's fantastic. This is normal. This is our normal spring weather or fall weather.
So when
70 degrees.
And when was the first snow? Maybe a couple ice.
2 weeks ago, I think.
2 weeks. I was just gonna say I used to live here and moved to Fort Collins like 5 months ago. And we love it. My wife and I, but it doesn't snow as much as I think it does here. So yeah, I kind of miss that snow.
We did the opposite. Well, we lived in Gun Barrel, which is sort of Boulder, and we moved up to just above Jamestown. So we live at 8,700 feet now. And we get all the snow. So all the snow that you don't get, we get.
We get all of it, yeah.
Gun Barrel, yeah. I used to live there. We used to live there. We used to live by Celestial Seasonings by what is it, Powderhorn?
Yep.
Yeah, where everybody lives, I guess.
We were right across the street in Twin Lakes.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's a nice neighborhood. We miss Boulder. I mean, the cool thing about Fort Collins, it's great. Definitely we now have more space than we used to. But yeah, we miss it. But I bet Jamestown is much cooler.
Yeah, we have an amazing view of Long's Peak right outside our window.
Yeah.
So every morning, get up and drink my coffee and look out at the mountain.
When did you guys move there?
June 15th.
There you go.
Oh, recently. So you guys didn't.
Of last year, sorry, not
so
this year.
it was
last year.
you didn't go through the whole flood
No,
thing. Oh my God, that was bad. We had our basement flooded. It was pretty bad. Cool. So, all right, I'm gonna kick off this conversation by asking you guys. Don't think about this too much. What is a food or an ingredient or a beverage or a fruit, I guess, that you guys are like, I don't know, obsessed with lately, or dessert, or
a food that we probably eat far too much of, but I always say it will be my sort of last supper. Because we really like them. It's also the easy button is a cheeseburger. We have a lot of moving parts to our lives. So it's sort of, so it's not like, a junky cheeseburger. Like cheeseburgers can also be good for you, but it's an easy button for us. But we also just really like cheeseburgers. Yeah,
we like cheeseburgers too.
But
like homemade or
even just out. Like if we were to take 10 of our friends in Boulder and we were to poll them of like, where's the best burger in town? I think all of us would probably say, or maybe 9 out of 10 of us would say Black Belly.
Really?
That's the best cheeseburger in town. Yeah.
Never been there.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. Is that on Arapahoe Avenue?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have a sister restaurant called Santo in North Boulder in the Ideal Market area.
Uh-huh.
They also make a solid burger as well. But yeah, it's pretty great.
What is would you say the key or secret to a great cheeseburger rather than just a good cheeseburger?
I'm definitely a medium rare sort of person.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
A great bun, toasted.
Yeah.
And I think just local, like solid ingredients.
Yeah.
Knowing where it comes from, like the actual animal protein is key, and like local produce.
Yeah.
That's where now people are like, ugh, eye roll. But I think that's important. So.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's one of the things that make your business unique, different, is the fact that you guys focus a lot on that. So that's pretty cool. Is there a burger place in town that you guys like? Because I personally like Reuben's. Have you guys been there?
Yeah, we
Burgers
went there.
and beer.
I won't say quite a bit, but when we first moved here, and it was something else before it was Reuben's, and they kind of relaunched
Really?
it. It was all cycling themed.
Yes,
they've converted
still
it a little
is.
more to like sports bar, but you still see a lot of the stuff around. Yeah, it used to be really heavy cycling themed.
Really? Because when was the last time we went? But that's why we liked it, and I think it was more like a Belgium cycling theme. All kinds of Belgian beer. I love all things craft beer.
Initially, they only had Belgian beers on the menu.
Probably.
And then they branched out because I think all the Coloradans were like, we need some hops. So they brought in more beers. So yeah, now they have a great burger there.
Yeah. You guys like craft beer?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good answer. How about you, Kelly?
Many choices in town and in Colorado. So
Yeah.
I drink a little beer. I'm not a huge drinker, and I always think I can finish a beer, but I'm usually not successful at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good stuff. I mean, Morgan's probably he's definitely more of a beer drinker than I am. But
Yeah. 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 Within my wife and I, it's just that we used to have a business in the craft beer industry, and that's how kind of we learn about all kinds of beer. And it was fun, but then I gained like 20 pounds, so that was not good. So let's talk a little bit about where you guys grow up. I think I read about you, Kelly. You grew up in the Midwest, is that right?
I did in Michigan and Indiana.
Where in Indiana? Because I lived there 2 years.
Did you really?
Bloomington.
I grew up in a town called Valparaiso, otherwise known as Valpo.
That's not in Chile, right? Yeah.
No, it is not. It is not Valparaiso, which is also known as the Valley of Paradise.
Yeah.
In Chile, I'm sure it is the Valley of Paradise. In Valparaiso, Indiana, it is the literal home of Orville Redenbacher.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
Popcorn,
the claim to fame, Orville Redenbacher, which is an amazing place to grow up. But I just had the itch to get out of there. You know, like most places, most kids, when you're younger, you're like, I gotta get out of this town. But yeah, Michigan and Indiana, the Midwest.
So Michigan and then Indiana.
Yes, that's correct. So
cold weather.
Yeah, you know, when people
Still
hear
in Indiana.
people think, you know, the Colorado weather is bad. It's usually people who don't live here think that.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that compares to weather in the Midwest as far as Michigan and Indiana. And I also lived in upstate New York, and nowhere rivals that. Yeah.
Would you say Michigan is colder? I guess I would assume than Indiana, or what do you think?
Oh, they're pretty parallel.
Yeah.
Michigan and Indiana. I mean, it's gray 8 months out of the year with
Yeah.
you know huge. You know, the snowfall is really epic.
Yeah.
Like staggeringly so. But the big thing was ice. So like
Yeah.
frigid cold temperatures and ice. So
I agree. It's like it's not fun. Like it's cold but not fun. Whereas here, I can get cold, and I guess it's not as. I think because of the humidity, it doesn't feel as cold
right
here. Then, how about you, Morgan? Where you from?
I'm an Air Force brat. So I
Nice.
was born in California. I lived a couple places like Greece and Hawaii. And I lived as a kid longest in Virginia. So
Oh,
sort
really?
of
Yeah.
southeastern.
I never been to Virginia. We used to live in besides Indiana, Arkansas. So I'm from Peru. So I was born there, grew up there, moved like 16 years ago, and went to Indiana to school to IU.
oh yeah
And my brother went to Purdue, so it's funny. And then I moved to Arkansas, and then Missouri, St. Louis, Arkansas, and then here, because we're not very happy in Arkansas, but that's where my wife's family is. So Northwest Arkansas. But I think I read this before that when you were like very little, you knew that you were going to be a chef and you were going to be a runner. How did that come about? Like you were like 5, I think.
I was literally 5 years old. Yeah, I was. You know, when you're in elementary school and you have field day.
Yeah.
I was at a field day when we lived in Michigan, and it was on a cinder track.
Yeah.
If you've ever run on cinders, which are just like really teeny tiny gravel, so if you fall, you're sort of screwed. You know?
Okay.
You don't want to fall on a cinder track because it really chews you up. But I ran the 50-yard dash, and they were yards at the time. 50-yard dash and the 100-yard dash, and I just remember like running as fast as I could. I just loved it, and at the end of both of those races, I just remember telling my mom, I'm going to be a runner. This is what I'm going to do. This is it. I'm going to be a runner. She was like, all right. And then I that was it. Like, I just always ran.
Yeah.
Every chance I got. And then I also, one of my chores every Saturday was to dust in the family room and, like, you know, polish all the furniture. And I would turn the TV on, and on Saturday, there was no Food Network at the time. I was born in 1970, so it was like PBS. So they had, it was like Julia Child and Yan Can Cook.
Yeah.
And So I would watch that when I was dusting,
Yeah.
and I would just sit and like over and over dust the same spot, so I could just watch, continue watching.
Yeah.
So my chores looked like I wasn't done with my chores yet, but my
Yeah.
mother was on to me. But so I would just watch that, and I was just fascinated with that cooking.
Yeah.
So I just started cooking. I was like, I'm going to be a chef, but and also not just a chef. I wanted to be a pastry. I wanted to work with chocolate. My mom had been giving us carob, which is like fake chocolate. It's like hippie chocolate.
Oh, okay.
So I thought for all these years, I was like, oh, chocolate's really sucky. I don't like chocolate.
Yeah.
And then I went into, we were living in Indiana at the time, and my grandfather took us to Godiva Chocolate in Chicago at Water Tower Place, and he gave us each $5 to go and buy something. I was like, oh, I don't like chocolate. I don't want to get anything. And he was like, what is wrong with you? Go get some chocolate. Excuse me. So I bought chocolate, and I was like, oh, well, this isn't any kind of chocolate I know.
Yeah.
Then I was like, oh, my parents have been lying to me all these years. This is really great.
Yeah.
And then I was just hooked. I thought, oh, this is it. I just dreamt about it. It was amazing. So I wanted to be a chocolatier. That's what I wanted to do. So years later, when I went to culinary school, like I grew up a line cook, and I focused on savory. But I did end up for over 10 years just focusing on chocolate work.
Wow.
And yeah, but that's what I did. Both of those things, it was just like immediate, just like lit my switch, and that was it. I was like running and cooking. And there was, a brief moment of like 5 minutes where my parents were like, this is great. You should definitely do this. And then I, rebelled and was like, screw that. I'm not going to do that. But, that lasted a short period of time. But yeah, I just knew what I wanted to do. And that was it. I don't know where that comes from. You either do
That's
or you
insane.
don't. But
what did I want to do when I was 5? Morgan, do you know what you wanted to do to be when you were 5? What were you doing when you were 5?
Well, when I was a kid, I was pretty nerdy. So when I was a kid, I was like, I'm going to be like a NASA engineer or something. And
Yeah?
Yeah, that totally went the opposite direction.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say opposite direction, but not so much that way, yeah. And I was a couple majors in college. My first major was computer science. So definitely didn't end up there.
And so were you always into sports as well when you're a kid? I mean, you've done a lot of things, right? Like cycling, adventure racing.
Yeah. I was never really into sports, traditional sports, I should say. I did run some. I ran track a little bit, and just was generally active, but was more into the outdoors as a whole. So if it was outside, I was pretty into it. So paddling, climbing, anything outside, I was generally happy to do. And so that evolved, I think, pretty well into cycling later on. Yeah, and that was sort of a weird thing. I think one of my summer jobs, I was like, I'm gonna get into mountain biking, and I bought, saved up some money and spent like at the time it was probably $800, which was a lot of money for me at the time. Bought a Trek hardtail and
nice
endoed a whole bunch, hit trees and that kind of stuff you do when you start mountain biking, and that's turned definitely into like one of my passions. I love cycling. So.
And any particular cycling, or is it basically mountain biking, or all kinds of cycling? And follow-up questions: how many bikes do you have?
That's a good question. So I'm pretty happy on a bike no matter what. So I think given my choice, I'd ride dirt over a road, but I like road. I like gravel. Yeah, I'm just pretty happy riding no matter what the surface is. And I think right now I own 7 bikes.
Oh man,
Kelly has 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, 6 or 7 bikes. I forget. We sold one. We had a cargo bike that I used around Boulder a lot, and we sold when we moved up to the mountains because I just couldn't see myself using it up there.
It's funny. My wife one time told me. So I have 2 bikes, and
you need more.
Well, she's not. She's funny because she doesn't like running, and she loves cycling, but she doesn't get the idea that you cannot sell your bike to get another bike, because one time I told her that I wanted to get a time trial bike to train for triathlons, and she was like, you should sell your road bike. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to have your road. Yeah, exactly. So, but she loves cycling, and she's really good, actually.
Excellent.
So the interesting thing is that she used to have this dirt bike that she loved, and she ended up selling it because she became an EMT. And the more she got into the whole EMT, I guess, business industry, she heard all kinds of awful stories about people, And so she got scared. She was like, I'm not going to bike anymore. And then she tried running trail running for, well, actually road. No, she hated that. And yeah, but with trail, she's more open actually. So we were planning on doing some trail running this summer. Didn't really happen, but she definitely likes the idea of trails. Talking about trails, you love all things trails.
Yeah. Dirt is good.
So, okay, a lot of questions. You've run to like almost 40 marathons and 700 milers. Like, how did you get into all things trail and ultra?
You know, I ran track as a kid, and then
as you can see, this is a very random, like all questions bombarding you.
I'm really ADD, so this is great for me. This is perfect flow as far as I'm concerned. You go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I ran track as a kid, and then I needed something to do when track season was over, and so I started running cross country.
Mm-hmm.
What I liked about cross country was I remembered watching some of my friends race one year,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, they're like running through the woods and jumping over logs and streams. Like, how can I do that? That's super fun. So that's why I joined cross country. But I was a sprinter when I was in track, so I didn't quite understand, like, you know, you don't just go sprinting for a 5K right away. You have to figure that shit out. So that was a little bit of a challenge for the first year. But so that's how I got into trails, was really through cross country.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, in the summer, or like seasons when I wasn't actually in school and running, I was just like play around out in the woods, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I can do this on my own. I'll just go run around out in the woods. So that's how that sort of started. And then when I went to culinary school in New York State, I spent a lot of time like up in New Paltz and up in the Catskills,
Mm-hmm.
and Bear Mountain, and it was just trails. And it was also a time in my life where I didn't want to be on the road. I don't like running on the road. I was kind of bored. But I kind of fell in with this group. I just became friends with like some older runners who at the time were older to me, or probably my age now, in their 40s, super young.
Of course.
And they just kind of took me under their wing, and
Nice.
they were like, well, you should do this, go run around the trails. And you know, that's kind of how it started. And I just loved being in the woods. It was quiet. And I think if that's in you, you'll find it. You'll somehow organically find that. And kind of the same way that Morgan probably just found mountain biking. But yeah, if it's in you, sooner or later it's going to pull you hard enough that you're going to find it. And that's really what kind of pulled us to Colorado as well. Like my whole life, I've never really felt that I belonged anywhere until we moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
I spent like 14 years in Virginia, and I never felt at home.
Yeah.
And I always felt pulled out west, and I didn't know where that was. And we moved to Colorado, and I was like, oh, this is it. I'm here 5 minutes. I'm home.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels the same way for us.
You know, it took a while for me to like find my tribe out here.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's it. That's where I need to be. And the further up into the mountains that we've moved, the more at home I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just good. Being on a trail is good. I'm oddly going to run my first road marathon in, at least 12 years in January. Morgan and I are going to Hawaii, so I'm going to run at sea level.
Nice.
But I'm trying to figure some stuff out with some asthma in my lungs, and I'm hoping that this will help out. So, but I'm oddly excited about it. But Morgan's shaking his head. Look. Well, I'm like, oh, it's only 4 hours, or you know, I'm hoping that's the longest that I'll be out there. That's just like a training run, right?
Yeah.
Comparatively, but if I can do somewhere between like 3.5 and 4 hours of just running down the beach in Hawaii or next to the beach in Hawaii, that's cool. But then it will be back to the trail. But my training, you know, over 50% of it will be on the trail anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just felt pulled to the trail. That's just always been it. Being in the woods is good. Yeah.
It's funny when you were talking about being out there by yourself. I've been dealing with an injury on my left foot, and it's still a thing, but I have such wide feet that I didn't really know until recently. So I was wearing all these like normal medium width shoes, and my left foot started hurting, and so now I figured it out, and I started wearing wide shoes, I guess, and so now I started running again, and it's been great. One of the things I used to do is I would always listen to my music while running, but then this last few runs that I've been doing, I have not. I didn't bring my iPod, and it's been great. It's just all I've been doing is just trying to focus on good form and kind of enjoying the fact that, hey, I can do this again and go out, early again and kind of try to deal with the cold weather a little bit, but kind of embracing it and enjoying it. And you were talking about January marathon. I was thinking, maybe I should do. I did the Miami Marathon 2 years ago. And it was fun. I just did it just for fun to go there. Food related. This is awesome. So, well, I was just gonna say, like, being from Peru, I miss Peruvian food. Like, I miss fish, like seafood, especially ceviche and things like that. And when I was there, there's so many Peruvian people who live there, and we just went to all these amazing restaurants, and it just felt like home. I just didn't want to leave. I miss my wife, but I didn't want to. It was great experience just eating all this food, especially after running a marathon. It was just awesome. But it was a great experience. And for cycling, Morgan, any particular races that you've done or distances that you focus on both mountain biking or road?
That's a good question. I hadn't done a lot of races in the past couple of years. I just did a 50-mile mountain bike race up in South Dakota in Spearfish called the Dakota 5-0, which is a lot of fun. Okay. So I'd been a part of this mountain bike training group the past couple of years, and for different reasons missed some of the goal races. So this was super fun. Yeah. And I've done a couple of hundreds and some different things like that. But mainly, I think the past couple of years, I used to race a fair amount. I raced short track for a period of time. But the past couple of years, I think I've focused more on just more like project or experience than race. And certainly nothing wrong with racing. There's it's really actually great to do an event where it's all kind of lined up. The course is lined up. Yeah. The support's kind of lined up. You have to worry less about being completely self-supported and things like that. But in general, like I really like big days with friends and things like that, and kind of finding some places. There's a friend of ours who's a adventure photographer named Fred Marmster, and I know Fred. Yeah, Fred's a great guy.
In a previous life, I hosted a trail running camp in the Tetons, and Fred joined the last day. It was with Chrissy Mel and Luke Nelson. Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
He's just started getting into bike packing too.
Oh, cool.
And so we were talking about, he's like, I was like, man, he had done this trip recently, and I was like, man, I'm kind of bummed you didn't call me. He's like, could you do that? Could you just like take off for 4 days? And I was like, well, it kind of depends. But I was like, you can always ask, because I'd love to do it. And it sounded epic. It sounded amazing. So I think the idea of getting out and doing, certainly going places you haven't been, and I think what's nice about a bike, certainly nothing wrong with running, but like what's cool about a bike is you can cover, in many cases, a significant amount of terrain. So you can see some cool different things. On the other hand, some of the terrain and some of the places we like to go is not really appropriate for bikes, or not unless you want to push it. Yeah. Right? So it kind of all depends. But yeah, so recently, like just with, frankly, like my day job and RAD and things like that, sometimes it's hard to fit in all that training. But yeah, it's always fun to get out. And I certainly prefer longer rides to shorter rides, but it all depends.
Can you think of what would be the most epic place where you have ridden your mountain bike? If you could think of one. I know it can be hard, but.
That he has ridden?
Yeah.
Haleakala?
That was fun. I don't know that was. I mean,
well, that wasn't your mountain bike, but.
It was.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, most of my riding, so a lot of riding on the East Coast, and then Utah and Colorado. So there's great trails out here. I mean, Moab is always, I think, a great place. There's so many trails. There's so many more trails there now, and so I think a lot of that's just fun, and some of it's pretty remote. So I think anything out in Moab is going to probably always call to me. Kelly had mentioned Haleakala. So when we went to Maui the last time as a family trip, I think I was looking around. I'm not a beach person. I kind of grew up around the beach, like Hawaii and Virginia and things like that. But I get stir crazy after about half a day of lying around. So when we first picked Maui, I was like, what can I do? What can I do? Can I ride my bike anywhere? I looked at some mountain biking. There were some
Yeah.
kind of weird trails that weren't clearly marked and like really local beta kind of stuff. And then I was like, oh, there's this volcano. Hey, I can ride up this volcano. And it's pretty
wow.
cool. I forget, I think it's 10,500 feet, but you can basically ride from sea level to 10,500 feet. And it's super cool. So it's a good long grindy ride. You like go and like you're supposed to like dip your bike tires in the ocean and then like ride up to the top. And they actually do these tours where you can ride down, so you can like get shuttled up to the top and ride down.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's a fun, different perspective. And they actually do a hill climb. I forget the winning time is insanely short because it took
How much?
hours.
How much time? Oh, I was gonna say, how much time did it take you to climb
I
that
think
thing?
it took me, I want to say about 3 hours and change to get up there.
Okay.
I forget what the mileage is off the top of my head, frankly.
Yeah.
But there's a cool graphic I saw that compares the climb up Haleakala to, I think the climb up, like it was either the Tourmalet or the Alpe d'Huez. So like
okay.
one of the classic tour climbs, and it was pretty interesting in terms of like, because it's considered a beyond category climb.
Oh, wow.
But it's fun, and it's cool because you start out on the beach and you kind of ride up through this lush area, and then you end up in this beyond tree line there, and this like weird volcanic stuff.
Yeah.
And it's super cool. Like you can ride through Cloud Lair, and if it's clear, it's beautiful up there. It's amazing. So yeah, that's super fun.
From what I understand, Peru is like a paradise for all things mountain biking.
I'd like to mountain bike there.
I've never, well, I don't really mountain bike, which would love because I want to do Leadman. Like
Yeah.
maybe
gosh,
not,
yeah.
maybe, I don't know, a few years from now, but yeah, I don't have a mountain bike. Oh, I had one, but that was a bad one. So, but there's so many things that you can do here. That's the thing is like, I have a list of toys that I want to get and it's at priorities, right? So the last thing that I bought a year ago was a time trial bike. So I was training for Ironman Boulder. That's what I usually do. Like I do two things. I like I do triathlons and trail running. I love both, but I think I focus more on triathlon and use the triathlon training to do ultras, which I haven't done that many. Done a bunch of 50Ks and a 50-miler. I did the Silver Rush.
But it keeps you fit if you're training for Ironmans. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's and last year I was training for it, and I had a bike crash, which was a silly. I was just leaving the transition area, and then I looked at my watch to kind of set it to remind me to eat, and I just ran into one of those fences, and my aero bar just got destroyed. But it happens. It happens. So curious to learn more about the origins of RAD. Like, what did you guys? First of all, of course, forgot. How do you guys meet?
I was a customer Morgan was a manager at a backpacking store in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Called Blue Ridge Mountain Sports, and I was a customer there. That's how we met.
Nice. Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
That was 10, 11, 12, 13 years ago. Something like that. Maybe 14 years
Maybe
ago.
14 years ago.
Maybe 15.
Super 14.
I know. Let's say 14.
And when were you before you moved to Colorado and Virginia?
Williamsburg, Virginia.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Nice. How long have you been married?
9 years.
9 years.
The bad thing is we always forget. The good thing is we both always forget. We're like, how long have we been married?
Oh yeah, it can be tricky.
How many years? Is it 8 years or 9?
We remember when we moved here and we got married a year after we moved here, so I just do the math.
Oh yeah, you. Oh yeah, I always do that too.
Unfortunately, neither one of us really is too upset about it. So,
Oh yeah, we have two.
Seems like forever.
We have two anniversary dates. One, it's the Vegas wedding, which was on May 25th, and on September 20th was the religious wedding. It was more from mom and dad, I guess.
Right,
But
yeah.
Vegas was, so okay, we got engaged and we're like, okay, maybe we should get married to start doing the paperwork thing for my visa. So
Oh,
we
that's
just
smart.
decided to go there, and it was fun. It's just a weekend, but
Did you do a drive-through wedding?
we did not. But it was so funny because when you are filling all your personal information, there's like a checklist, and they ask you things like, would you like Elvis to officiate your wedding? Would you like God to be mentioned in your wedding? And you're like, yeah, no. But yeah, it was.
Did you yes to Elvis?
No, but I got a pair of sunglasses.
Oh, well, that's good. You have some swag from your wedding.
I like Elvis sunglasses. Sorry, I was gonna ask you guys about the origins of RAD. Just curious how, I guess, not only how it all started, but like, what do you guys see? You know, what kind of need or insight or thing happened that make you guys think, okay, we should start this.
Do you want to tell that?
I think it's your origin story, but because I think it was really Kelly's concept. I kind of kicked it off because of circumstances, but you go ahead and start because it's like I said, I think it was your brainchild.
It's sort of weird. I was just driving home one day and I was already just kind of doing some contract work for friends that were athletes that would ask me to feed them.
Sorry, let me. You're good.
Are we good? Okay.
No, sorry.
She was a chef instructor at the time, by the way, so she had a day job.
Yeah, I actually had a couple. I was working full time as a chef instructor at the local culinary school in town, and I was also working part time, which at the time was probably like 25 hours, with an organization in Boulder that focused on helping youth in recovery. So I was working with them on food and eating and that sort of thing. And then I would also, just as friends who were athletes, would reach out to me and say, hey, can you help me? Can I hire you to feed me as I'm training for this whatever race, or like just contract work for small caterings and that sort of thing. And I was driving home from work one day from teaching, and a friend called me and said, I'm training for the Boulder Ironman.
Okay.
And can you help me? And I was like, I can't, because I'm so busy. And I'm really bad at saying no to things. But I said no, and I hung up the phone. And right when I hung up, like my thumb was on the disconnect button, and I said out loud to myself, that's what I want to do. I want to feed athletes. At the time, I was really feeling just kind of stressed out from both of the other things I was working on. I loved them so much, but it was emotionally really, I needed to step away from them. And I was feeling a bigger pull to working with athletes and elite athletes, and I was feeling much more connected to the community in Boulder, the elite athlete community. And I was just like, why am I not doing that? Why am I not feeding athletes for a living? That's what I'm going to do. And then I started just talking to myself. I was like 5 minutes from home, and at our place in East Boulder in Gun Barrel. And by the time I got home, I had worked all this out in my head, and I had already had the conversation with myself of, well, this is what I want to do, and to feed elite athletes in Boulder. And I was like, oh, well, surely there's someone else already doing this. This is Boulder. It's a food mecca and elite athlete mecca. And then I was like, no one is doing this. No one is really doing this. And then I got home, and I'm like, why is no one doing this? So I burst in the door, and I said, Morgan, I'm going to feed elite athletes for a living, and I want you to be my business partner. And that was the conversation. That's literally what happened. Yeah. And then it just sort of evolved from there. But no one was and or is doing that still. No one is doing what we're doing. And people say, oh, well, there's this food meal delivery service and this, that, and the other. But we're not a meal delivery service company. And there's really no one doing what we're doing, which is basically a kind of a boutique catering company that focuses on very specific dietary restrictions around elite athletes.
Can you give me an example, for instance, somebody that you're working with, and what do you do?
Sure. So the big thing is this, there's a ton of catering companies, and there are a ton of people that can say, I can cater that athlete retreat for you, or that athlete summit for, let's say, Solomon wants to have an athlete summit. They can find dozens of catering companies that could cater for them, but what those catering companies cannot do is have, and most of those catering companies would be really exceptional at their craft and have beautiful food, but what those catering companies will stumble on is once that athlete manager says to them, by the way, it's 50 people and I need everything to be gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free. Half of them are vegan, half of them eat primal, and 4 of them have anaphylactic allergies to this. This also needs to happen. A, B, and C needs to happen. And do you understand the ultra running community or the mountain bikers? And I need you to be embedded in this community as well. And can you come and stay at our VRBO for a week? And by the way, we'd love it if you also ran with us in these days.
Yeah.
If you can find that person, then you can duplicate RAD.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's definitely different.
Yeah. And get geeked out on it.
Well, I mean, it seems like I think about. I mean, it sounds like the fact that you guys are doing something that you're really passionate about, and also helping people, your people, right? Because you guys are, athletes, and I mean, it's
there are people.
Yeah. And when you said that you like to work with elite athletes, I'm just curious, why is that? Why do you prefer an elite athlete, let's say, over, I don't know, somebody else, or is it their focus on?
Yeah, the focus definitely. But I say that because the elite athletes also have the sponsor that will then hire us.
Yeah. Got it.
The everyday athlete like myself, I don't have a sponsor that's going to hire someone like RAD to throw a party or have an athlete summit or a retreat or a camp or a fill in the blank. But the elite athletes do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that pays our mortgage.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That keeps us going. But it also provides a big reach for us.
Yeah.
And we also offered individual meals, but an individual meal only reaches, one or two people. Only reaches the
That's
meals, the individual meal.
Right.
But when we are at post-race, serving food, or we're at a retreat that has 30 people at it, it reaches much more, and that's invaluable.
Yeah, of course. So Morgan, Kelly just told you about her idea. What went through your mind, like, after Kelly told you about?
I'm not even sure I remember my response. It was probably something like, yeah, okay, cool. I mean, because it's funny because we're pretty different people, if you haven't picked up on that. But so, like, I'm pretty linear, and Kelly's very abstract. Right. She's very creative, and, like, I'm a creative problem solver, but I'm not necessarily, like, brimming with ideas the same way that she is. But I do, and I think one of the things that brought us together is certainly, like, our excitement and our shared passions for different things. So I think initially she told me that, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Sounds like an interesting idea. Let's talk about that. Work out a business plan and figure out how to make it happen. And then I can't recall what the timeline was between when she presented the idea and then at the time, I think we talked about this a little earlier before we started the podcast. So the company that I actually work for now, again, at the time was called American Recreation Products, and it owns a bunch of outdoor brands. And I was working with them in a certain capacity called a channel market manager. So I was in charge of about 20% of the business, or worked with the sales team, product team, and marketing team to kind of draw everything together and work on, like, special makeup and a bunch of different things. So I could tell the writing was on the wall. They were kind of going from this channelized structure back to a branded structure.
Okay.
So kind of different business units per brand, which is sort of what exists now.
Right.
And at the time, so I was like, something's going to happen. They're going to probably dissolve my department, figure that out. So I'm just going to do a good job, work as hard as I can. And if something happens, hopefully they'll stick around. So they did dissolve my department. And they actually offered me a different job working for kind of the mass side of the brand. And that was at that time, I think I went home and I was like, man, I just don't know what I want to do. And all of a sudden I was like, we should start the business. I should take this. I should take the severance package, and we should just start the business.
Well,
so
talk about good timing.
Yeah. So I think so. It was definitely serendipitous. Things sort of aligned for us and made it work together. So I was pretty excited about that. And it just seemed like Kelly said, why is nobody doing this in Boulder? Like, this need exists. And I said, well, if this could succeed anywhere, it'll succeed in Boulder, given the athletic community, the focus on food and kind of locally sourced product here. So I think it just sort of all aligned. And I took about a week off and sort of cleared my brain and kind of refreshed myself, rode my bike a bunch. And then we kind of kicked it off. We put together the website, kicked it off, and just started kind of guerrilla marketing. I think just really looking for customers. Yeah. At that point, it was pretty interesting. So we were actually here at BRC and that iteration a bunch. We did like tons of fun runs, different ride stuff, and we just really kind of hit the ground running. And we're just like involved in as many things as possible to get the brand and the idea out as we could here in Boulder.
Right. Okay. Nice. And now these days, what would you say is like your biggest marketing tool that you guys use to build not only awareness, but of course build business? I mean, is it like through your ambassadors or your athletes that helped build that awareness, or through connections, I assume, or
think yes to all of those. I'll be curious what Kelly's perspective is on this too. We're sort of at a little bit of a crossroads right now, partially just because of Kelly's doing a couple of different things, and I have my day job with Ultimate Direction. But we're sort of at a crossroads. We kind of need to do a little bit of a. I need to do a website refresh. So you can look at our site right now, but it's old. It's left over from when we kicked it off, and there's a little bit of not current relevance from when we kind of switched our business idea. But we've grown, like Kelly mentioned, we've grown our reach in our community mainly with athletes, organizations, and individuals. So that sort of happened, when we started working with like Tim Olson, and via Tim Olson, we started working with the North Face,
right.
And with Tim's running retreats with Run Mindful, and then kind of expanded from there. And then we got involved with some Solomon athletes and started working with Solomon, and we do quite a bit with them, and just sort of expanded from there. So in some cases, I think there was like you're doing this, you should call RAD. You're doing this, you should call RAD.
Word of mouth.
Yeah. So and so not just word of mouth, but word of mouth like in professional relationships.
Right.
So when we became like this go-to for like Scarpa, like whenever they do something here in town, they kind of call us. We've become really close with Ultra. So whenever they do their athlete camp, last time they did it in Moab. This year they're doing it in New Mexico somewhere?
I
or
think Arizona.
Yeah, so they usually focus on around a race for their things. So they're like, cool, we're going to call these guys because, like Kelly mentioned, it's like we're going to be in this random place and we need to cook for like 100 people with this kind of food, and we just make it work. So we're pretty flexible. We can work in a variety of environments and things like that, and we just take care of it. And once we kind of gain that trust from that group, they're just like, cool, I can't call anybody else because I know that when I've done this, I can check the box. I can because they'll take care of it. I literally don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And then I think one other thing that we've really strived to do is kind of be this value add where it's not just like not only do I know that this is taken care of and I don't have to worry about it, but I know that they're going to make the experience better by being there. Not just the food, but the presentation, the interaction with like my athletes or my organization, just a group of people. So we really worked hard to kind of try to make our part in the process elevate the overall experience.
When I put together this ultra running camp, that was I used to have a different business before, and that's when I met Chrissy and Luke, and I hired them to help me to host this camp. There was no RAD back then, so I had a good friend, trail runner, who was a really good cook. So I asked him, hey, that was when we were still living in Arkansas. I was like, hey, you want to go to the Tetons? Yeah. All you have to do is just to cook. So we did a nice road trip. It was fun. But I was going to ask you, what are the logistics of, how crazy can they be, let's say, for an event that's like 100 people? Like, is it stressful?
Oh, yeah, it's totally stressful.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
There's always something. There's really, last year we had, you just never know what you're going to get, and usually never know what you're going to get until the 11th hour, and then you're like, surprise. So last year, one of the funniest, of course this is happening, the day or so before the event, again, not in Colorado, it was on the road. I found out that the hotel we were going to be in, and we had a kitchen all set up to use, that the kitchen, quote unquote kitchen that we had available to us had no ovens. Yeah. We were going to be able to use this kitchen, but there was just a table. So we were going to need to feed this really wonderful group of athletes that we were really excited to work with. I think there were 50 people or so, and we were going to feed them for 2 or 3 days in a row.
Supposed to be 50, it was like 70.
Which also often happens. So you have to just be able to adapt and roll with it, and you can stress out inside, but you can't show it outwardly.
Yeah.
But so anyway, it was like, oh, there's no heat source. Oh, I can prep everything, in Boulder like we normally would, but once I get it there, I'm kind of screwed. So. Fortunately, the restaurant industry is pretty amazing, where I just started calling random restaurants in the town that we were going to be in. And I was like, hey, this is what's happening. I'm sort of screwed here. you're like within 2 miles of where I'm going to be. I'm looking for one oven twice a day for this many days for this amount of time at this temperature to hold this many hotel pans. Can you help me? And they're like, oh my gosh, I can't help you, but call this guy. I bet they can help you.
Nice.
So it took a couple hours and a little finagling, but that's what we did. And it worked out. But I was also supposed to run that weekend at race, which was really silly of me to think that I could do this, because what happens is I get really stressed out and I internalize it. And then like the night before the race and the morning of the race, I just did not feel well, and I had a pretty high fever, and so I just ended up not running. So it was a learning experience for me. Don't book anything huge when I also have a run, or don't plan a race for myself when I have something already really important booked.
Right. Yeah.
So that was an important lesson. But yeah, it is 90% of the time stressful.
Yeah.
Some random things happen. I mean, we've done every one of, like Morgan mentioned, Tim Olson's Run Mindful retreats, and even the ones we have here in Boulder. The last one, there was one day that was like, what the heck is going on? Like, there was one day that was just like, ay, this is not working out the way it should. And it was really stressful, but you just have to roll with it.
Yeah.
And Tim and Krista are so great. They're always just like, after the fact, we sit and we're like, okay, let's troubleshoot. If this happens again, what should we do? Let's take a beat and let's just communicate a little bit further. So that, you just figure it out. Yeah. But you have to be able to just roll with it, man.
Yeah. Talk about being flexible.
There's always something. Yeah.
It reminded me when we did this camp, the last day we're supposed to, cook, Peruvian food. But that day, the runners did like a long run. I think they did like a 30 mile run, which is, I think, around the Teton, Grand Teton, I think it's called, because I didn't run. Anyway, so they were like super tired and they were ready to eat. So we ended up going to a restaurant instead. Like, they just decided, we don't want to wait. We just want to eat, because cooking, it was going to take time,
Yeah.
And it was not that many people, 8 or 9, a couple extra. So, there's always people who join, I guess, that thing. But it was a little stressful. But we ended up going to a restaurant, and everybody, ended up having their own meals, and it was fun. I have a super random question. Like, when you're doing your races, what kind of nutrition do you eat? And the same for you. Like, I'm curious. Did you just go the regular gel Gatorade thing, or did you?
That's a good question. I think maybe to start with, I'm pretty fortunate that I don't have typical stomach issues with anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had once this last year, and I just didn't drink enough water, and so my stomach turned on me. But in general, I'm pretty happy with. I usually do a mix, and I do prefer real food if I can get it versus energy food. But I'll usually do like Chews. I like Justin's nut butter.
Yeah,
because it comes in packets, and it's a really nice alternative to like just plain sugar.
Yeah.
If I have enough forethought to do it, we make these awesome little like 1-inch waffles that like we can do. We've done like turmeric and bacon and some other like chia. So we've done a couple of different things.
Yeah.
And I like to kind of mix up the textures and try to get a couple of things. And that way I usually don't get tired of whatever I'm eating.
Yeah.
It's usually kind of Chews. I usually do like a Stroop waffle or two. If we make the waffles, I eat those pretty consistently. And then usually I usually just drink water with electrolytes. I don't usually do carbs and water, but yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, real food if I can get it. And if I'm doing something that's over probably 4 hours, I need to switch over to real food at some point. So I start doing like peanut butter and Nutella burritos are pretty good.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of different stuff. And then if it's like multi-day, then you start to get into real food. And at that point, you can eat almost anything. You're like pizza. You start dreaming of like the last expedition adventure race I did, which was a long time ago now. I remember on this paddling leg, I think on the second day, I was like dreaming of pizza. And I was like trying to like use ESP to tell our crew to like have pizza in this transition area, because I was like, oh my God, I just want pizza. You start dreaming of savory food.
Yeah.
So.
That sounds good. It gets old, right? When you are, when you eat, I don't know, just gels or, I don't know, but it's the same thing, tons of sugar. I get tired. Yep. When I do all these races, I bonk a lot, so. Mm-hmm. But how about you, Kelly? What do you eat when you do 100 milers?
I will do goo products work really well for me. So I have just a little issue just like with energy. Like I'm really sensitive to caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'll use caffeine during a race, but so I like that in the form of like Roctane. I don't do E-caps or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that, but Roctane works well for me. And in a longer race, I'll switch out between, like I'll definitely do like potato chips or something at an aid station, like that salt, or if there's like pickles or pickle juice, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm really fortunate, knock on wood, that I've never had any real issues with my stomach. So I'm pretty dialed with this amount of calories works every hour, and my gels or like chews, that sort of thing. But if I'd really try to keep something salty with me also, in just to switch up that texture, even if I know I'm like I just need some calories.
Mm-hmm.
This year, again, the energy thing, like I have oddly for the first time in my life started adding Red Bull to my longer things, which my longer training runs and races, which has been really interesting. I've fought it for a long time, but when I look at the ingredients, it's really parallel to the things I'm already drinking from energy
Mm-hmm.
in my Roctane.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives me the energy like if I'm really struggling. So that has been something new. And Morgan is like, "What are you doing? Is this Red Bull yours?" So that's been a little different.
It's a big departure for her.
Yeah. I'm more like,
She
"Where's
like
the
looks
kale
at
smoothie?"
looks at like a cup of coffee afternoon, and she stays up until midnight.
Yeah.
Just wave it
I
close
have
to her face.
I have a really hard time with caffeine. Just really, you know what? If I drink caffeine and don't do anything with that energy, then I
Right.
have a hard time. But if I drink caffeine and I have an outlet for it, then it's good. And that's been a big discovery. It took me 48 years to figure that one out. But so the Red Bull has been a big help for me. At Silver Rush, it was a big help for me.
Yeah.
I had some struggles there, but and that's helped me just with my energy level, with some autoimmune stuff, or my energy's just like crash and burn. So you have different tools in your arsenal, and that's important. So
For Silver Rush, that 50 miler, I would eat a bar of Snickers chocolate after finishing a 10 miles. So that would be my reward. I would be like,
you're so smart.
well, I don't know about that, but and
Did
then
it help?
it did. And I also used to have like I also have this strategy with music that and I've only done that 50 miler in a few 50Ks, but I usually run at least the first half with no music. So when I really need to dig deep,
You can crank
I
it
just
up.
and I just feel really good. And talking about Red Bull, so the first Ironman that I was training for in Louisville, I asked my coach, "Hey, Tony, the boom, hey, what do you think about Red Bull? Should I go for it?" And he's like, "No, don't do that, because if you have one, unless you keep going with it, you're gonna crash." Of course, I didn't listen to him, and so and I grabbed I had one in the special needs section, kind of halfway through the bike portion, and I had one, and oh my god, it just gave me the wings. Like, yes, felt amazing. Like, I remember I had a friend who was a better cyclist than me. I remember passing him, and I'm like, this is incredible. And yeah, I bonked like big time. The marathon was really tough. But what about? Do you guys also do Coke?
I don't, but I guess if I craved it, I would. I think in racing, like I eat much differently in a race.
Yeah,
than
for
I do
sure.
daily. Like I've had Darcy PQ. Darcy.
Yeah, of course, legend.
Darcy's a pescatarian. She eats really well. Like, she's so smart about her daily food. But when she races, she's like Coca-Cola and potato chips, or Coca-Cola and I was gonna say Fritos, but I think that's Tim. But yeah, I mean, when you're racing,
Yeah.
like you gotta
Everything's allowed.
whatever you
Yeah.
gotta do to get yourself through that.
Oh, yeah.
Everything else is like, I would never judge anybody on what they ate during the race. If you gotta eat a bunch of candy during the race, like that, like knock yourself out. Now, if you're eating candy during the day, I'm totally gonna give you a hard time for that.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna wait, because the people that are eating candy all day every day, it might be working for you now, but it's gonna catch up with you.
Yeah.
Sooner or later it is. But during the race, like, if I craved a Coke, I would totally go for a Coke.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I see it and I'm like, that sounds good, I'll go for it. Yeah.
Coke was the only thing I had in my last Ironman. Well, not the one where I crashed, but I don't know, 5 years ago, I just couldn't have any gel, anything. And Coke was the only thing I could just have, and it helped. Races, are you training for any race? Or Morgan, I know you said you're not doing a lot of races lately, but are you thinking about any next epic ride or adventure?
Not specifically. So I became the sales manager for Ultimate Direction last October. So about a year on the job right now. And I used to run quite a bit in Counterpoint, and then especially out here in the winters, kind of like all the trails got crappy, and then the shoulders of the roads filled up with ground. Like Kelly bought me a fat bike one Christmas.
That's awesome.
So my winters changed. So I've been predominantly cycling for the past couple of years, and working with Ultimate Directions gave me a good reason to kind of get back into running. So just part of a really fun, healthy community. Getting back into running is frankly terrible, but it's good for me. And we're fortunate to live up close to some trails, so really pretty trails. So like I can get on a trail and I can run 5 miles. It's not necessarily always comfortable, but I can do it and it's interesting. Like running on the road is kind of soul crushing to me at this point. And I've done 2 road marathons. I'll never do another one of those. So potentially, I think originally I was going to do a trail half this fall, and the circumstances changed, so I'm not going to do it. But I think I'll probably do a trail half or a trail marathon probably in the spring.
Nice.
If I had done the half and if I had fun with it, I was thinking about maybe doing the Dirty 30, but I don't know if I have time to commit to that for this next year or not. We'll see.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I've done the half,
hard.
so I've never done the 50. Yeah.
So we'll see. And then I don't have any. I'm not sure if I'll do the bike training group again next year. It was a lot of fun, great people.
Yeah.
But it became really the season was sort of in the middle of like what gets really busy for me at work, and I don't want to commit to something that I can't fulfill. Of
course.
It's really frustrating, I think, for everybody. And had a great coach, and just it was really challenging. So I think this next year is going to be more running for me and more like bike fun than training.
Nice.
I think for me, the only race that I have on my calendar is in January, the road marathon in Maui. And then I need to just refocus for 2019 and just kind of have like that, look at my calendar and figure out where I'm at, and just kind of have that heart-to-heart with my coach and myself and see like what I want to do, what my goals are. Yeah.
And one final question about RAD. Do you guys have any specific plans for what's next? What would be, where to take next, RAD? I don't know, restaurant or like a package goods or
we've that's an ongoing conversation for us, and actually we just we're kind of touching base on that this morning. So because Kelly's teaching a block at school, we're actually I guess technically ride sharing. Yeah, we're commuting together. where before I had like 35 minutes down the canyon, nice and quiet. But so we kind of revived that conversation, which was really interesting. So I think at this point, what we're going to continue to kind of grow what we're doing right now, which is working directly with organizations, brands, and events and things like that. So we have, I think, some fair upside for that. One of the things that we talked about originally, we don't ever have any intention of having a restaurant. And we've had a lot of people request that we do that, but having both worked in the restaurant scene, I think we're not interested in kind of giving up our lives. We've sort of worked really hard.
Right? Yeah.
We've worked really hard to get to this point. Not that being a restaurateur or anything like that is bad at all. I mean, we both have so much respect for that. It's just not what we want to do. Like, I don't want to work until 2 a.m. again. So what we have talked about, though, is originally we were kind of trying to figure out what we're going to do next for a commissary kitchen and things like that. And we a couple of years ago were in Portugal, and I think was it Barcelona, or was it Madrid? Or no, I'm talking Spain now.
Yeah, we were in Portugal. I
was
don't
it Portugal
remember.
or Spain we were talking?
I thought it was Portugal.
Okay, so evidently my memory is bad.
Somewhere over there.
We were doing this food tour, which was cool. So we went to these different parts of the city and kind of experienced some different little, tapas, and really we went to this one little market in this little place that was amazing. So maybe just the size of where we are right now, which obviously the listeners can't see, but let's say the front was probably 10 by 12 maybe.
Yeah.
And it had a little counter, and it was almost like deli style. And so what we loved about that is you could go and you can get a little bit, you could stand there and eat it or take it home. And I think that sort of little market is something that we would actually really enjoy doing, because we could make the kind of food that we like to make and support some other parts of our business. And then that would allow people to come and get the food and take it and participate, you know, in the kind of the community and the food that we're building, without us having like a restaurant and having to build out that side of things.
I see.
And one of the things, Kelly was actually involved with one of the first food trucks in Boulder, with street chefs back in the day. One of the things that she loved so much about that, and I'm sorry I'm speaking on your behalf, but is that it was all about the food. So it wasn't about the location, it wasn't about the decor, it wasn't about who was showing up, it was 100% about the food. And so I think the market concept for us would allow us to kind of like really build the kind of food that we want, support the community in a way that was meaningful, and kind of give us a location to work out of. So
Nice.
Anything else to add to that, Kel?
I don't think so. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So so we want to continue what we're doing now, which is working with great people and amazing organizations and brands. One of our goals for 19 is to get to Chamonix for UTMB.
Oh yes.
Well, yeah, if anybody wants to foot the bill for that one.
That's right. We will cook for any amount of athletes. I shouldn't say.
Wow.
For a reasonable amount of athletes. Let's make that work.
We basically just need like a couple 2 to 4 sponsors to basically be like, yeah, we do want you there, to make it worth our while, so we could feed them and then be at the race. But
is UTMB in the bucket list?
Oh, to race? Gosh, I mean, there's a whole lot of other things that have to happen to get the points to do that. But sure, why not? I mean,
you're right.
Chamonix.
Yeah, never been there, but
it's
just
so beautiful.
So pretty.
Yeah. I mean, how can it not be, right?
Yeah.
I think everything's at the bucket list.
I agree.
UTMB, I think for me, like maybe
so
CCC
beautiful.
or shorter.
Yeah. I mean,
that's amazing.
I feel like I'm already up all night cheering everyone on. I might as well do it from there, right?
Awesome, guys. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming. I had a lot of fun. For people, if people who would like to learn more about RAD, where can they find you online on all social medias?
Well, our website is radboulder.com.
Cool.
So that's pretty easy. The socials, Kelly mainly manages.
Yeah, it's all just Rad Boulder.
Yeah.
Like if you go to Instagram, Twitter, Rad Boulder.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Rad Boulder's funny. So yeah.
And oddly, no one had Rad Boulder. I don't know how.
I
that's
know.
possible.
At the time when I was looking for URLs, Real Athlete Diets wasn't available, so I was like, "Oh gosh, what are we gonna do?" And somehow we came across Rad Boulder, which again, I can't believe nobody in this town. Had gotten at that point, so.
That's a great name.
So it's ours now.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
thank you
having us,
guys. This was fun. Yeah, of course.